No objection. It is so decided. Delegates, colleagues, and friends, I must say that you did it. You delivered.
Exhausted, sleepless, 36 hours past the deadline. Down came the gavel, up came the relief.
If we can unite on commitment to address the source of the problem, which has been fossil fuels, this will make it a historic day.
This is a sea change moment, but it doesn't mean you've solved everything overnight. We have to keep pushing.
The good news is that humanity did manage to arrive at this, even though we should have done this earlier.
Just a bit, 28 years to address the real problem, that burning coal, oil and gas is killing the planet. But they've finally done it. No phase out of fossil fuel or even phase down. Instead, a pledge to transition away from fossil fuels this decade, whilst trebling output from solar and wind. But delivery is everything.
So what this COP needed to do was to give a signal that governments and regulators are going to support that transition. They're not going to slow it down. They're going to remove inefficient subsidies on fossil fuels. They're going to find a way to actually implement policies and regulations that will facilitate the tripling of renewable energy, the doubling of energy efficiency. These are all good things. Of course, in climate, it's never enough. We need to go further. We need to go faster. But this was a step in the right direction.
The hope is to peak global emissions by 2025. With almost 130 countries signed up to swift fossil fuel exit, the global conversation's changed forever. Thousands of oil, gas and coal lobbyists came to Dubai to wreck progress and lost. Arguably, so did Saudi Arabia, thus giving the biggest industrial revolution since the steam engine the global political impetus business has been crying out for.
We have to understand the role that COPs will play in our lives. COPs are not going to send an unambiguous signal at any minute that we are definitively moving away from fossil fuels and hitting 1.5 all on their own. What they can do is they can help amplify the signal that comes from business, investors, citizens, cities, that this transformation is unstoppable and we are going to do what's necessary to avoid the worst impacts of climate change.
Carbon capture is in the deal, but largely in the niche context of heavy industry. COP28 in Dubai recognising it's hugely expensive, takes years, doesn't work well enough. The fear of big oil using it as a means to go on drilling hasn't really materialised. However, the deal is also one giant diplomatic Swiss cheese full of holes and get-out clauses. Island nations faced with imminent extinction from rising seas say it's failed them. Worse, they were not even in the hall when the gavel came down on the deal.
We are a little confused about what happened. It seems that you just gavelled the decisions and the small island developing states were not in the room. We cannot afford to return to our islands with the message that this process has failed us.
Applause for that, because this deal will not, on its own, keep the goal alive of restricting global warming to 1.5 Celsius or less.
COP28 also needed to signal a hard stop to humanity's core climate problem, fossil fuels and their planet-burning pollution. Whilst we didn't turn the page on the fossil fuel era in Dubai, this outcome is the beginning of the end.
This marathon summit began almost a fortnight ago with the World Meteorological Organization warning about record temperatures this year, the human effect, and the devastation of the planet's biodiversity. 2 weeks on, a lifeline perhaps. This deal alone won't cut it, but as the world burns, if it is delivered in full, if it stimulates green investment, and if we move faster to financing poor countries to move to green technology, 1.5 Celsius could still be within our grasp.
Alex Thomson reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to Nigel Topping, who is a business champion on the Climate Change Committee and played a key role for the UN at COP26 in Glasgow. I began by asking him how historic the COP28 conference and agreement had been.
Well, not quite as historic as we would have liked, but nevertheless, I think you can safely say it's the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era, with some quite strong language about transitioning away from fossil fuels and much more ambition in terms of net zero by 2050 than is currently in the national plans of, say, China, India, and Saudi Arabia. So I think very significant.
You sound more cautious than Greenpeace. Greenpeace gave it a thumbs up.
Well, there's still some sort of loopholes in there referring to transitional fuels, which is a bit of a sop to the gas industry. Would have preferred not to see. And I think if you speak to the small island states, they would have wanted much stronger language about a phase out of fossil fuels. But given the consensus nature of the process, I think it's about as strong as we could have hoped for, probably a bit stronger. And again, remember that the negotiations is only half of the process. The other process, what the so-called action agenda, is all the things that are happening alongside. And there we've seen real progress in trebling renewable energy and big commitments on food, on nature, and starting to see some significant but not big enough amounts of money being committed to specific sectoral decarbonisation goals.
And be honest, did you ever really think that this kind of document could be the result of a COP summit held in the Gulf? I mean, this is a place that is completely dependent on the riches of carbon.
Yeah, well, a lot of people were very sceptical about the president, Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, who's also the CEO of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. I mean, there's still concerns that the company he is responsible for is planning to pump more oil. But I didn't doubt that he had the kind of drive and personality to be able to convene a strong result. And in particular, as I say, some of those side momentum on renewables and electric vehicles and things like that, very much in line with him being a CEO of a major company and that kind of emphasis on short-term deliverables.
In COP26, the UK, and you're very much part of that negotiating process, the UK was at the forefront of all this. It isn't anymore, is it? Especially since this government is considering, more fossil fuel drilling.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I sit on the Climate Change Committee now, and we have said that the UK has lost its international leadership on climate change. Because it's true, as the government keeps repeating, that we have decarbonised faster than any other major economy. So our track record is good. So it's not that bad. There's a mixed record. We're doing some good stuff on electric vehicles, on decarbonising the steel industry, and on attracting investment into battery factories. But those new fossil fuel licenses just confuse everybody internationally and make it sound like we're not really committed to the transition.
But also, there's just more money to be made from a business point of view in renewable energy than there is in drilling for oil, for instance, isn't there?
There's a massive economic race on to be the producers of the energy and of the materials and of the goods that power the zero carbon economy. I mean, and Chris Skidmore, the Conservative MP who brought the Net Zero 2050 legislation to Parliament, wrote that fantastic report, just demonstrating how much it's a competitiveness issue. So it's not about tree hugging, it's about securing jobs and driving economic growth for current and future generations.
Nigel Topping, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Great, thank you.